Picture this: bell-bottoms, shag pile carpets, and the unmistakable hum of a laugh track. The 1970s gave us some of the greatest sitcoms of all time. Bless this house, Are You Being Served? Some mothers do have 'em. But for every classic we remember, there's a handful of sitcoms that have slipped through the cracks of TV history. Today, we're diving into 5 obscure and forgotten gems from the groovy decade that you've probably never heard of, or maybe just barely remember. Let's dust off the archives and see why these shows didn't stand the test of time. Let's start with Chalk and Cheese, 1979, a show with a premise that sounds like it came straight from a joke book. It's about the unlikely friendship between 2 polar opposites: Dave Finn, a working-class cockney with rough edges, and Roger Scott, a posh and uptight intellectual. Michael Crawford, fresh off his career-defining turn as Frank Spencer in Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, played Dave, while Robin Horden stepped into the role of Roger. The comedy centred on their culture clashes and wildly different views of the world as they navigated their lives as reluctant neighbours. While Crawford was already a proven star, the show struggled to find an audience. Critics felt it lacked the charm of Crawford's previous work, and the humour didn't resonate, as the premise came off more contrived than clever. The show aired on ITV but was quickly axed after one short series, leaving barely a ripple in TV history. Next up is his Lordship Entertains, 1972, a sitcom brimming with comedic pedigree. Written by and starring Ronnie Barker, the series was set in a crumbling country estate where Lord Rustless, played by Barker, tried to keep the family home running, usually with disastrous results. The cast included Josephine Chewson, who would later find fame in Keeping Up Appearances, and David Jason, years before his legendary role as Del Boy in Only Fools and Horses. Mary Baxter also shone as part of the ensemble. The humour leaned into the farcical, with plenty of misunderstandings, wordplay, and slapstick. Despite Barker's brilliance and the impressive cast, the series ran for just 7 episodes on BBC Two. Critics were lukewarm, finding the humour a little too traditional for the time. The changing taste of the early 1970s, with audiences gravitating towards edgier, more socially conscious comedy, left his Lordship Entertains feeling out of step, and it quietly faded from memory. Then there's My Wife Next Door, 1972, a sitcom with an intriguingly modern twist for its time. Created by Brian Clemens, better known for writing The Avengers, it starred John Alderton and Hannah Gordon as a divorced couple who accidentally end up living next to each other in the countryside. The series explored the awkwardness of their forced proximity and the lingering feelings between them, blending witty banter with heartfelt moments. It was critically well received and even won a BAFTA for Best Situation Comedy in 1973. So why didn't it last? The truth is, the show wasn't exactly cancelled. It was always intended as a single series run. However, its abrupt ending left fans wanting more, and the BBC never revisited it. Today, it's remembered as an underrated gem, though overshadowed by more prolific sitcoms of the era. How about a truly bizarre entry? Come Back Mrs. Noah, 1977, was the brainchild of Are You Being Served? Creators Jeremy Lloyd and David Croft. Set in the futuristic year 2050, it starred Molly Sugden as Mrs. Noah, an ordinary housewife who accidentally gets launched into space aboard the Britannia 7. Think of it as a sitcom version of Lost in Space, but with canned laughter and farcical humour. Despite the pedigree of its writers and Sugden's popularity from her role as Mrs. Slocum, the show was universally panned. Critics lambasted its absurd premise and weak jokes, and audiences didn't warm to it either. Only 6 episodes were made, and it quickly became one of the BBC's more infamous flops. Finally, there's The Upchat Line, 1977, an ITV sitcom starring John Alderton as Mike Upchat, a charming, quick-witted bachelor who gets through life by weaving elaborate lies about his identity. Written by Keith Waterhouse, the series was built around Alderton's natural charisma and knack for fast-talking humour. Each episode saw Mike adopting a new persona to woo women or escape sticky situations, making it a showcase for Alderton's range as a performer. While the show had a unique concept and some sharp writing, it struggled to find a consistent audience. ITV aired 2 short series, but by 1978, it quietly disappeared from the schedule. So, what happened to these shows? Some, like Come Back Mrs. Noah, were doomed by their absurd premises. Others, like Chalk and Cheese, couldn't escape the shadows of their stars' earlier successes. A few, such as My Wife Next Door, were simply too short-lived to build a legacy. They're fascinating snapshots of the era, experiments in comedy that didn't quite land, but remain intriguing relics of 1970s television. As we look back, it's clear that the sitcoms of the 1970s weren't just about the big hits. For every iconic show, there were bold misfires, underappreciated gems, and quirky outliers. They may not have stood the test of time, but they tell us something about the creativity and risks of television in its golden age. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favourite forgotten sitcoms in the comments below. Who knows, maybe we'll rediscover another lost classic together.
So, man.